Cool. Oh, all right. We've got 140 people in. That's good. So yeah, I'll just let a few more get in. So what I'm doing today is I'm gonna talk about bass lines and how you can get a lot out of a simple bass line, or just any bass line that you learn. Because what tends to happen is, what's the main thing that bass players learn? They learn bass lines. If you're saying, like if I'm teaching somebody, it's like, and they say, well, what should I practice? It's like, well, first and foremost, you want to practice bass lines. But what good is that? What does that do for you? Well, for most people, I mean, it's pretty much just something to play, something to practice. Even if it's just something simple like over a tune, it's just something to practice. I suppose you get a little bit of technique out of it, on a very, very basic level. And some people might think, okay, well, I'm getting some repertoire, but, overall, what really are you getting out of it beneath all that, the nuts and bolts of the actual learning that you're getting? So I think how I'm going to describe this, I'm going to approach it from a few different angles. There's basically, let's say, the technique side of it. I mean, on the face of it, just a simple bass line like one I'm going to show you in a second, a very, very basic one, like... It doesn't get that much more simple than that. But even something like that, you can get a little bit of technical practice out of it. Even if even if that seems really, really basic, you can still get something out of it, as I'll show you in a minute. You can also get quite a lot of harmony knowledge out of it. Now, I know that as soon as I start talking harmony and, music theory, a lot of people start to glaze over. But, harmony is the main thing that us bass players have to address when it comes to music theory. So again, you get to actually see harmony in practice. You get to see where all these arpeggios, all these scales, all these intervals, all this stuff that I talk about on these lessons, how it's used in practice. And then one of the other things that you're going to get out of this, again, another thing that I'll talk about in a second, is going to be actual vocabulary. And you use that vocabulary as you learn songs. You're gaining vocabulary just in the way that you would with normal verbal language. You can use that to actually create your own bass lines. When you learn to speak, when you're in conversation, the words, the structure, the phrasing, all of that, you take it on board and regurgitate it to some extent. That's why we all sound like our parents, and the people that we talk to, the way that dialects work. So I'll talk about that as well. I'll just see if how many people come in. Let me just check the chat, just make sure that we've not got any more delay. Okay, good. Cool. And just before I start with that, it's worth mentioning that obviously the Groove Trainer Volume 2 course is out. I will reference that. I'm going to actually use some of the grooves that I've got in it. So we're talking this. The course is out over at TalkingBass. It's been out for 2 weeks now, and the initial sale for it finishes tomorrow. So if any of you are looking to get the Groove Trainer Volume 2, the sale finishes tomorrow. So if you want to grab a bargain, go over and get that. It's got a 25% discount on it, so it's down from whatever it is, $59 down to whatever it is. I just reduced it by 25%. I can't remember what it came out as, 40 something. So that's over there. In the Groove Trainer course, there's a set of lessons in Module 1 that talk about a lot of these nuts and bolts that I might talk about in a minute. There's I think it's 13 lessons in that first module, and then the 60 progressive grooves in the second module I coach you through each one, addressing all of these things, be it technique, harmony, all of that stuff, right? So basically, those Groove Trainer courses are an extension from, if any of you have done the Basic Fundamentals course and the Beginner course, it's kind of an extension of that, because a lot of people wanted some grooves to work on, some bass lines to work on. Now, I don't really want to just put out a lot of bass lines because, without telling you what you need to, how you can use it, there's kind of no point. You can go off and just find your own favorite tunes. But what I wanted is a progressive set of them that starts at absolute basics, stuff like this. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, working all the way up to that, 16th note kind of funk grooves. So it kind of works up through that in a very progressive way. So if you get volume 1 and volume 2, they're both on discount at the moment, then it's you'd have 120 bass lines to work through. So you can kind of treat them like etudes. But that's enough of the sales pitch for that. So I am going to be using a few of those grooves for this. So let's just see how many we've got now. 159. Cool. All right then. So let's have a look. So what I'm going to do is use this first. I'm going to use a bass line to begin with, and I'll put it up on screen here. I'll try and move a little bit out of the way. Let's move that. I'll make that a little bit smaller. So move over here. So what we have here, I'll just play through it. So I've got a track for it as well. So let's see. Can you all hear the drums? First things first. Hopefully that'll come through. So, dead simple. Okay, so what sounds like an incredibly simple bass line, you can still get a lot out of it. And, if you were learning this bass line, for instance, if I did it in a lesson or it was part of a tune that you were learning, you'd just learn it by rote. You just learn the notes, just work through them. And it's very simple rhythm. It's just eighth notes. But what more is going on there? So first things first, let's just have a quick listen to that drum beat. So really simple straight ahead beat. You've got that bass drum, 1, 3, and 4. Simple backbeat, right? Listen to the hi-hat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So one of the first things that I want to mention is that when you're listening to a drum beat like that, and you're going to have to, let's say you had to create a bass line over something like that, you're going to have your main accents, which are going to be the bass drum and the snare. So there we've just got them on that 1 and 2. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? No syncopation there, no nothing like that. So it's very driving, very straight ahead. But the hi-hat is where a lot of the subdivisions lie. So there you're hearing it as eighth notes. Now you'll notice here in this groove that I'm playing, it's eighth note based. That's where that comes from. So if somebody gives you that kind of drum beat, rather than just coming out with a load of, jumping straight into 16th notes and things like that, the eighth notes are giving you that subdivision that you want to work from. And the main kind of influence that you're going to have on the notes and the rhythms that you're going to come up with. So that's the first thing. You want to really kind of be able to see how the bass line works with the drum beat. So anytime that you're going to learn a bass line, listen to the drum beat as well. Don't just listen to the bass line. Listen to what the drums are doing and listen to how the bass line works with it. Listen to accents in there. Listen to little offbeats. You might sometimes get a little, offbeat choke on the hi-hat, dum, things like that. You'll notice that the bass line and the, guitar, keys, whatever, in terms of the rhythm section, things will be working with it, okay? You can work against it, but, if you're coming up with a bass line, that is going to be a direct influence. So those are the accents that you want to listen for. So that's the drum side of it. Now, the other thing to look at here is the actual technique. So again, it's a very, very simple bass line. But in terms of the actual, let's say the fingering in this hand, now, a lot of you... beginners, okay? Like people have been playing a while probably won't have this kind of problem, but for absolute beginners, there's often a little bit of a, fingering issue in both hands actually, where you'll think, okay, well, you're generally going to want to go for the stronger fingers, So that's why you'll sometimes see odd fingerings from people when they tried learning bass lines and they've not been, let's say you've not been shown how to play it. You just know what the notes are. Sometimes you might come up with a little bit of a not wrong fingering, but you might go for what instinctively feels better with the fingers. Now, if you've got good, if your technique's pretty good, it's not really going to matter. But for some of you that don't have a particularly good pinky, let's say, you're less likely to try and use that. You're probably more like, if it's a line like something like that, you're probably going to want to use the 1, 2, and 3 rather than 1, 3, and 4. If it's a scale line working up like that, you might be thinking, okay, well, I'll use this kind of fingering, and that's where a lot of the technical problems come in. So for something like this, I'll just very quickly work through the first 2 bars because it's, the second bars 3 and 4 are the same, but just up a fourth. But here we're on a B flat there, 6th fret of that E string, and I'm starting that with the 2nd finger, okay? So then as I come up, I'm using the 1st and 4th fingers, then 2nd finger and 1st finger. And then I come down, 4th finger and 1st finger. So I've pretty much got a 1 finger per fret span going on here. Now, I know some of you don't like playing 1 finger per fret because you have your hands might not be big enough, or what you perceive as not having big enough hands. But one thing I would say with something like this is, stick with that fingering and just move the hand more. So as you work up, anybody can stretch those first 2 fingers, but then when you have to go for the 4th finger, you don't need to have this kind of span, You can just slightly move the hand. Just use micro shifting. Just use the thumb slightly to just pivot. You can even move all of the fingers up. I can move to this position. I've gone from here just up to here. Just move the hand rather than thinking of a stretch. Because if I was playing it down on F sharp or something like that, or let's say it's not even this kind of bass line. If you've got this kind of line working up, let's say an F major arpeggio, 1st fret, 5th fret, on the E string, a lot of people, when you're a beginner, you think that you've got to stretch it. But you don't. If I'm playing that, I just move the hand. I'm pretty much in a Samandal kind of position. I'm using a 3 fret span. But to be honest, I'm not even thinking of, 3 fret span. I'm just moving the hand. It doesn't matter where the other fingers go. It doesn't slow you down at all, and you just need to make it smooth. So that's just one thing to bear in mind with the technique. But like I said, this is a very simple bass line, but even in something like this, you can get used to this movement of the fingers. And then in terms of the picking hand, that's usually the one that's going to cause you problems because, people always spend time thinking about this hand, but it's going to be the picking hand that's going to get your finger twisted. So with this bass line, I would stick to alternate picking throughout. And you can start on either finger, but maybe start on the 2nd finger and the middle finger. And just strict alternate picking. So 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Might feel a little bit weird when you come back down onto the A string. 2, 1, 2, 1. Oh, sorry. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You're on the 2nd finger when you get across to the D string. And then just keep alternating. Then when you shift, you want to look out for the thumb. So I'm keeping the thumb on the pickup when I play the B flat on the E string, and then as soon as I move to the A string, I make that transition. It's actually when I play the F there, actually. You usually want to make that transition with the thumb when you're actually on the 1st finger. It just works out that way. So for the first one, I've still got the thumb there, and I make the transition on the 1st finger. So yeah, even though it's a really simple bass line, you can really put the fingers and the technique under the musical microscope so that you get good technique in terms of locking the strings down, getting out, avoiding any residual noise, all of that stuff. And start slow and then just build up speed. Even if you've been playing quite a while, a line like this can be good for you in terms of working on getting a clean technique. And then you can just build up speed. Etc. Now, that's the technique side of it. So, anything that you play on bass you'll be getting technique practice. The other thing, the thing that really, really comes into play with bass lines like this is the harmony itself. Okay, so this is what I would kind of stress the most in terms of the study side of it. So I've included the chord symbols there above. So for the first two bars, we've got B flat 7. You don't have to play the chords, by the way. I'm just outlining them here. And then we've got E flat 7. So for that first two bars, it's working around a B flat 7 arpeggio. So this is where learning your arpeggios comes into play. Now, if I was to just play a B flat 7 arpeggio, I've got the B flat, I've got the D, I've got the F, and then I've got the A flat up on the top. So that's going to be 6th fret of the E string, 5th and 8th frets on the A string, and then that 6th fret up on the D string. That's a B flat 7 arpeggio. It's got a root note, a major third, a perfect 5th, and a minor 7th on the top. Okay, so you want to be able to play this all over the fretboard, ideally, but even if you just know it in one octave, or in one position there, and know the intervals in there, you will be able to see how this bass line has been constructed. Now, it's a B flat 7, so we're repeating that root note, and then just coming up to the top. So that's the outline of that B flat 7, and then we've got that G in there. Now that's not in the B flat 7 arpeggio. That's a 6th. That's a major 6th from that B flat. What's actually happening there is that we're just using that as a passing note. So a passing note just passes between two chord tones. So we've got the flat 7 there and then the 5th there, and it's just joining them up. We're just filling in the gaps. That's all it is. Whenever you hear about passing notes, chromatic passing notes, all that kind of stuff, these melodic devices, you're basically filling in the gaps between the arpeggio notes. And that's basically what a scale is. Now, if I was to play the appropriate scale for that B flat 7, it would be a B flat mixolydian, right? All a mixolydian scale is a major scale with a flattened 7th on the top. So there's a B flat major. I'm sure you all know a major scale. You just flatten that 7th. So you take it down from the A down to the A flat. Sorry. Now that scale you can see as the B flat 7 arpeggio with the gaps filled in. So we've got the B flat and then the D. We're just filling in the gap between with that major second with the C. So one thing you can do just to get used to this idea of these melodic devices is to actually take an arpeggio like that and just try using each passing note in turn. So if I was to play the arpeggio and then just try putting in that second. So we put the C in there. So that was the second there. So I've just added that with the 4th finger there. Then I could try just adding the 4th in there. So we're just filling in the gap between the 3rd and the 5th. Oh, when the saints. And then you could try putting the 6th in there. And you'll know that sound. So that's where passing notes come in, and you can see how it's just basically the scale. Okay? That's from a functional perspective. When you're looking at the harmony, a scale is basically a framework of the arpeggios with the gaps filled in. Okay? And you can fill in those gaps too, which I'll get to in a minute. But, if you take the scale, you can then fill in the gaps between those notes. So if I'm playing, we've got the G, the A flat, and the B flat up on the top, I can fill in the gap between those as well and put the A flat in there. And you might be thinking, well, this all just sounds like theory nonsense, but this is the beauty of learning grooves like this and breaking them down and analyzing them, because then you can see how these things are used, how it works. And I know it looks quite over-analytical, but this isn't heavy theory. This is just how notes work. You've got your basic chord progression. You've got the notes of the chords. They are the consonant notes. They're the notes that work. And then the other ones just move around between them. And this is why sometimes you might play something. You might make up a phrase. You might be trying to do a fill. You might be trying to do a solo. You might even be trying to make a bass line through something. And you land on a note which you know is in the key. You know it's in the scale. But it just sounds wrong. You know, you hit it and you think, for example, if you're playing, you land on the fourth, you land on the sixth, and you just hold on it, and it might just not be what you wanted. And that's because it's not a part of the chord. It's a dissonance. It's in the scale, but it's still dissonant. You can use those dissonances, but you just have to know how to use them. You have to use them in passing or whatever. There's a bunch of different ways of doing it. So, again, like I said, this is a really, really basic bass line, but you can still learn and see how the harmony and all of that operates in a bass line. You know, this is a perfect example of using that passing note between that seventh and that fifth. And at the end of the day, even if you don't see it in terms of its actual, you know, all the theory side of it, the next step that I was talking about is your vocabulary. Because just as much as you can have vocabulary in terms of soloing and things like that, you know, people talk about vocabulary and it's like, you know, like jazz kind of lines. The same thing happens with bass lines. You develop a vocabulary of them. You know, you listen to somebody, or if there's any of you out there that love Paul McCartney, you'll hear bass lines that those people or you yourself might play, that you create, and it'll always have a bit of a feel of those people that you've listened to. You know, that kind of like, what's a good example of that? You know, that kind of fourth to fifth kind of thing. You'll get that a lot in those kind of bass lines. And it's because you've been listening to those kind of bass lines, listening to those McCartney kind of things. You might, I mean, another example of like a McCartney-esque thing, you might be playing over a basic chord progression and you might go do a descending scale, you know, because you've heard it in a McCartney bass line. It's vocabulary. You're taking that on board. And it's the same thing with this. Once you get that under your fingers and you know what it is, you can just use that line again and again in the things that you create, you know, and gradually over time, as you learn more and more and more and more of this stuff, you know, goes up, goes in there, and you just, again, regurgitate it, you know, in the things that you create. So again, that's vocabulary. Now, I mean, just as much as there is vocabulary melodically like this, there's also vocabulary rhythmically. Now, there's not much to say about the actual vocabulary that you'll get from rhythms like this, because this is just, it's just basic eighth notes, you know. But, you know, if you're getting used to, let's say, a line, which I might show a type of in a second, where you've got something like that kind of one-e and da, you know, that kind of bass line. That rhythm, bam, bap, bam, bap, that kind of rhythm, you know, you'll take that on board, and then, you know, when you've got to come up with a bass line over a drum beat that has that kind of feel, you know, again, it's rhythmic vocabulary, because you can use that rhythm with any kind of notes. You know, you just use one note. Yeah, you can just use whatever notes you want in there, but it's the rhythm it's the rhythmic vocabulary. So you're just, you know, again, taking on all of this stuff. So, like I said, again, It's a very, very simple bass line, but these are the kind of things that you want to be taking on board, breaking apart, looking at it with an analytical eye. And then one last thing for this, what was the last thing I was going to talk about? Oh, yes, it's variations on these things. And this is where that kind of vocabulary thing, you can kind of play around with it a little. So if you're playing something like... what you can do with something like that is try playing around with variations on it by taking notes out, adding notes in. I mean, it's hard to add notes into this because it's just consistent eighth notes. But if you were to take notes out of this or just try different notes in there, I've just taken out a note there instead of just still working around that arpeggio. As soon as you've taken a note out of there, as soon as you've taken one of the notes rhythmically out of there, then you can start to play around more with the actual arpeggio and the scale that you've got there. And hey presto, you've got a different kind of bass line. So if I was to play that again, let's see. So hopefully it's the same drum beat, yeah. I'll just stay on the same. I won't move up to the E flat. Trying variations. So all I did there was take that bass line, took out a couple of little notes rhythmically, and then just tried playing around on that arpeggio. I knew what the chord was. I knew it was B flat 7. I knew that it was going to be the B flat 7 arpeggio. I knew that it was going to be the B flat mixolydian. I knew that major 6 there was a key part of this phrase, because it's those just going back to those. It's those little passing notes and the approach notes that you have in these kind of bass lines that give it its flavor. Because if you're just playing the actual arpeggio notes, it's just B flat 7. But the minute that you put something in like that major 6th in there, that's a characteristic scale step in there. So if I just do that again, that note as I can use that major 6th in there in lots of different ways. There it is. We're keeping that flavor. So, again, simple bass line, but just messing around with it, taking a few notes out, maybe adding a few notes in, changing the order of it. And also, another thing to do, well, there's another couple of things that you can do. I mean, one of them is to just transpose it. Don't just stick to playing something like this in B flat. You could maybe move it to, well, C. So move it around. Every position on the fretboard is going to give you a different set of technical and melodic hurdles. So down on F sharp there. It's a little bit more of a stretch. And you just got to you just get used to seeing those patterns in a different place and a different sound. So again, that's more well, what would you call that? It's kind of it is a technical side of it, but that's just a bass generalship kind of thing. And the other thing that you can do with something like this is if you've got something that's based on, let's say, B flat 7, you can actually try switching it to a different chord type. So if it's B flat minor 7, you think, okay, well, what can I do with this? Well, what would make it minor? Well, we're going to be working around a B flat minor arpeggio. So instead of the D there at the 5th fret of the A string, I would be using the D flat there at the 4th fret of the A string. Or you could play it here, but just for argument's sake, let's play it here so you can see it, how close it is to the same pattern. There's that minor sound. Now, it's interesting that I'm actually keeping the major 6th the same because I'm going for more of a Dorian feel there. Okay, so you can move these things through different chord types, and I mean, if you did it with major, you're going to get well, it's just going to be a little bit too happy for that. So if I moved it to a different key as well, so okay, so you can get quite interesting sounds with these things. But like I said, if you'd been messing around with the actual rhythms in there, you know, like when we were playing there with the, let's say I move it to a different key, and then I just change to a different rhythm. I just put the major 7th in there, and hey presto, we can use that melodic material, that riff that we've just come up with, and we can just place it in over a major chord. You know, it's I mean, whether you want it to, whether that's the thing that you want to create, you know, it's down to you. That's your own artistic expression, you know. But like I said, it's all vocabulary. Okay, so just before I go on to the next bit, let's just make sure that I've not got delay coming through on the vocal again. Don't worry, I'll come back to all the questions and stuff later on as well. Okay. So I probably won't go through all of these. Let's have a see what else we've got here. So I'll tell you what. Let's go for this one. This one's in Groove Trainer Volume 1. So this one has a disco kind of feel. So again, listen to the drum beat there. We've got 8th notes as our main subdivision. And we've got these offbeat chokes. Backbeat and everything is just the same. Very straightforward. But in the bass line, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what's happening here is that we've got these, we're tying over the middle of the bar, so you get this, okay, so we've got this anticipation of beat 3, 1 and 2 and, so we're on the and of 2 there. Now, it's not in the, well, it is in the actual drum beat there. You've got the open hi-hats on the ands, okay, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and, okay, so we're actually hitting that offbeat C there on that open hi-hat. Okay, now, not much to say in terms of the actual technique here, but again, for some of you, it might be a little bit of a tester. You got some octave patterns in there. Again, it's a very, very simple bass line. There's many different ways that you could play this. I'm using 1st and 4th fingers for the octave there on the D. Then I'm using the 2nd finger and 1st finger because I'm always wanting to stick on the 1st and 4th fingers really for the octaves. And then I can use 3rd, 2nd, and 1st fingers coming down, 2nd finger, and then switch up for the 1st and 4th fingers. But one of the better things to look at in this bass line is the actual use of these chromatic passing notes. Now, again, remember what I said about the about how we worked around the actual chord tones? Now, in this one, let's just look at the actual chords going by here. We're actually in D, but it's using a D7 for chord 1. It's a bluesy idea. I mean, you could think of that as D major, but we got... So ignore the dominant 7s for now. Just think of these as majors. Now, in the course, I do talk about functional harmony quite a bit. I'm not going to bore you with it here too much, but basically what we've got is D major. We're in the key of D major, but we've got this flat 7 chord. We're going down to a C. That's not in the key of D major, but it's a very, very common chord that you'll get in funk tunes and things like that. So it goes down to that flat 7, and then we've just got 4 and 5, okay? Now, in this bass line, we're actually making use of chromatic passing notes. Now, this is the perfect example of it. We've got the root note there of D. So, you know, if someone just gave you this chord progression and played that that drum pattern, and you had to come up with something, well, the octave there is a good start. That's just the root note of the D. But then the next chord is C. Now, in between D and C, 5th fret and 3rd fret on the A string, we've got the D flat, or C sharp. I mean, in this case, it's D flat because we're moving down. So we've got the D flat there at the 4th fret. We're just filling in the gap. So remember what I said, passing notes, they're just filling in the gaps. So, and then just octave again for that C. So that's a real simple one. It's just a simple way of moving between two chords that are a whole step apart. Then I use A flat to lead down to the G. So basically this is a double chromatic approach. Don't worry about the jargon. It's just a way of approaching a chord. So if you look at the G there, that's going to be the chord there. That's that chord that we're aiming at. So we're aiming at it. I'm coming at it from a whole step above. So I'm coming at it from the A and just coming down A flat, just filling in the gaps. So that's a chromatic approach, and you can use those a lot in funk tunes and disco tunes. You'll hear them all the time. Okay, and you'll see this kind of stuff in jazz as well. Here, it doesn't sound out of key or anything. This is how you make use of all the notes in the chromatic spectrum. You know, because often people will look at scales and think, oh, what notes can I use for a bass line? Oh, well, it's in the key of C major, so you can use the notes of C major. So that's not true at all. You can use any note. It's how you use them. So, you know, we're in the key of D. It's a D7 chord. It's actually got a flat 7 in the chord, remember? So that's outside the chord. If that's a D7, there's an actual C in the chord. I'm just filling in the gap. Because it's passing by, because we're not lingering on it, you don't get a chance for that kind of dissonance. Same thing down here. We're just approaching. You can feel that it's approaching into that G. You know, we're aiming at that G. Not only can you approach from above, but you could approach from below as well. So there's the G, 3rd fret of the E string. I can approach it from A flat G, but I can also approach it from F sharp G. So if I did that, here it still works. Okay, and then remember what I said about the chords that were a whole step apart? We've got the G and the A, so I'm just approaching with, again, filling in the gap. So it's G, G sharp, A, and then to get us back to the D, because remember we're on the A7 there, and we're approaching the D. So we're on the A, there's the D. So what am I going to do? I'm going to approach from below, double chromatic approach. C, C sharp, D. Again, filling in that gap between. It's the same that we use coming down. So if I took the octaves out of there, we'd have more of this. Well, first of all, here's just the root notes. So if, let's say with the drum beat. So, you know, you're coming up with the bass line for this. That's with no octaves in there, and I'm just using those passing notes or approach notes to lead into each chord. again, dead simple bass line, but you get to see how these approach notes work. You know, so that if somebody gives you a bass line, a tune, you know, you're in a band, and the guitarist gives you a chord progression, there's a drum beat, you know, it doesn't have to be like this, but, you know, whatever style you're playing in, and you think, well, what can I do that's not just root notes? Well, approach notes are your first, you know, port of call, because, you know, all you've got to do is approach each of the actual root notes. You know, you don't even have to think about the actual the chord tones for that one. You know, I'm just using root notes. Go on. And you could also, instead of at the end there when I played when we played the C sharp D to lead back up, I could actually come down from the top as well, E flat. So if I did that, again, that, you know, that E flat against that D, that's a pretty nasty dissonance. But because we're just approaching it in passing, it doesn't matter. So from below, and then, I mean, that way you can actually create just a line, you know, coming up. So okay, so again, dead simple bass line, but, you know, you're getting some practice at harmony, and that's all this is. You know, when there's all these lessons about arpeggios and scales and intervals and all that kind of stuff, this is what it's actually all about. I mean, this comes first, and the names come second. So, you know, when you see how it's applied, it can all start to make sense. You think, yeah, man, that's how you use chromatic notes. You know, that's where they can come into play. It's not just for going, you know, they can actually be used in a diatonic setting. So so the other thing that you know, I've been talking about with vocabulary is that, once again, you know, you could look at this and just think, okay, well, what are the main accents in there? You know, remember what I said about the rhythmic vocabulary? We've got those offbeat accents there, that little bit of syncopation. So with the drum beat again. One and two and. So from, you know, just that side of it, so ignore all this stuff, just the actual accents in there are enough to actually give you a little bit of inspiration in coming up with something. And then from that, you know, if you know your arpeggios, you see there D7, we've got the C major, G major, A7. If you know the arpeggios in there, then you can maybe come up with something a little bit different. I mean, just on thinking about it, you could just... So you could actually just use the thirds in there. There's not that much room to maneuver rhythmically, because we've not got that many beats for each chord, but just using the thirds. So there I used fifths as well. So if you know your thirds, you know your fifths, you know, based on what those chords are. There's all chord tones. There's the major third for the D. There's the major third for the C. I mean, they're all major thirds because they're all major type chords. But if there was a minor in there, you'd have to use the minor. And then the fifths. And then it's hard to use the sevenths in there. But again, it's just giving you more resources to draw on. You've got more material and, you know, stuff that you can use. And, you know, sometimes it can seem like you've got too much stuff, you know, like if you've been learning all about all this harmony stuff. But it's the kind of limitations that you're getting from the drum beat and the actual, you know, like looking at something like this, the vocabulary side of it. Without any vocabulary, you've just got nothing to say. Okay, just think about all the words. You could know all of the words in a dictionary, but if you don't know how to converse, if you don't have any vocabulary in like that way, actual. I suppose in that sense, it's not actually the vocabulary. It's how you use the vocabulary. It's the actual phrasing. It's the way that you construct a sentence. That's what this is. You're learning different little phrases that you can use over things. That's why pretty much a lot of the bass lines that you hear by certain people sound fairly similar. You can pick them out. They've all got the same kind of little rhythmic hooks, the same kind of little melodic hooks. That's their vocabulary. And the more you listen to these people and analyze what they're doing, the more you'll pick it up. And you don't have to analyze it that much. I mean, you don't have to get into the real nuts and bolts of the theory all the time. I mean, it's basically patterns on the bass, a lot of it. But, it's a lot easier if you actually do know that, because then at least you can put a name to it. A lot of this kind of stuff, it's stuff that somebody might know without actually knowing any of the theory, but they kind of know it by pattern, so they might know that, that major 6 to the minor 7 that I was just talking about earlier, they know what it sounds like, the bump, bum, bum, that funky. They know that that's going to sound like that. You're basically building your internal ear, You know that it's going to sound like that when you play it. It's vocabulary. That kind of Jacko thing. There's quite a few notes in there, so, you wouldn't ordinarily just think, oh, I'm going to play da 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 da, but it's vocabulary because you've seen somebody else play it, or somebody's just come up with it, maybe on the fly. Jacko obviously did when he was playing stuff, but it had been based on the sum total of all the other stuff that he was learning. So, again, dead simple bass line. I'll just show you one more. Which one should we do? I've got two others here. We've got that one. We've got that one. I'll tell you what, we'll go with this one. So this is from... and by the way, I can see that people are putting up questions in the chat. I will go back over these, although I might not be able to do all of them. But I'll just go back over those just after. But... for Groove 45. This is Groove 45 from Groove Trainer Volume 2, the one that's just been released this week. And I won't go through the whole thing. Let's see if I get this right. I'm gonna have to sight read this. So we've got 45. I played them about a month and a half ago, and I've not played them since. So I'm just gonna have to read it. So wish me luck. So. Okay, I did actually use that one. Well, I used it for one of the YouTube videos recently. I did a clip from the Groove Trainer course. Well, this is that one. Now, I won't go through the whole thing. Let's just take one bar of it as an example. So we'll just take the that first bar, let's say. So we've got that rhythm that I was talking about earlier, that dotted 8th note, 16th note. And, whether you can read music or not, those first two notes that you see there on that A flat on the 4th fret. So if you look at the tab, the first two notes, the fours that you see there, if you look at the sheet music there, you can see this dotted 8th note and 16th note, and you count that as one E and da. Now, a lot of people find that rhythm quite tricky when they're not used to funk lines and stuff. And the reason that can give you problems, and I've had this with students, when I've been trying to teach them a bass line, and then they're sat there and you try explaining it to them and they try playing it, and they kind of quantize the second note one way or the other. So what can actually happen is they end up thinking 1, 2. So 1, 2. Because it's on that offbeat 16th note. So 1 E and da. So 1 E and da 2. 1 E and da 2. 1 E and A2. So 1 E and A2. 1 E and A2. Now, if you've heard loads of tunes that use that rhythm, then it'll be familiar, and so you won't find it that tricky to play. But if you've been playing stuff that's not as syncopated, that's when it can cause problems, or just if you don't have as evolved a sense of rhythm. But so that rhythm there is going to be a part of the rhythmic vocabulary that I talk about here. So I'll just whip through these notes here. So we've got that A flat there, we've got that dotted 8th note, 16th note. So then we've got this E flat, F, E flat. So it's 16th note, rest 3 16th notes. So that's going to be to E and A. And this is where learning rhythm is really good for you, because then you can look at something like this and you can break it down and be accurate, rather than just listening to it and hoping for the best. Well, you can read it and be accurate. So to E and A. So 1 E and A, 2 E and A. Okay, so, and the idea with this kind of stuff, if you're not used to it, is to play slow. So, and then we jump up to that A flat at the, 6th fret of the D string, drop down onto that C at the 3rd fret of the A string. So, then we got the D flat, the D, and the E flat. Now, some of you might have already spotted a few things that I've already talked about, the chromatics and things like that. So, yeah, we've got the technique side of it. I'm starting on that. I probably would start on the 1st finger. So, some people might think, oh, well, why would you not start on the 2nd finger? Because then it's going to be 1 finger per fret. But you don't have to think like that. It's just go for the fingering that's going to work. So, 1st finger. Then I've got 4th finger and 3rd finger. 4th finger down to the 1st finger, and then I just use the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fingers to fill it in. So, not that much to think about. It's very Jacko-esque, is this line. But the main thing here is the chord. So we've got A flat 7. Again, a good old dominant 7 chord. So what's the A flat dominant 7 chord? You really want to acclimatize yourself with that. So we've got the A flat there, C, E flat, and then that G flat. So 4th fret on the E string, 3rd and 6th frets on the A string, and then the 4th fret there on the D string. So you really want to know that dominant 7 arpeggio. Like I said, you want to be able to extend it as you come up. So if you can play it all over the, over the neck, well, more, that's better. So you want to practice these arpeggios, see what the actual intervals are within them, and move them around the neck. So we look at this. We've got the root note, then we've got the 5th of the chord. So always, working it back to the chord tones. And then what we've got is this move to the 6th. Remember, we used the 6th in that first riff that we looked at. The 6th of the chord in these kind of, or the 6th of the scale, or the major 6th anyway, the interval, when used over these kind of chords, major chords or dominant 7s, is very soul-like. Like, you'll know that sound, that... that kind of sound. That's very much a soul sound. You'll hear it in so many James Jamerson lines, all that stuff. And so when you add them, you can hear it there. It's got a kind of a nice sound. It's not all hard edged like the flat 7 in there. It's got a more chilled out kind of sound. So I'm playing the 5th and then the 6th and back to the 5th. So that's just a little neighbor note. I'm just going from the 5th to the 6th and back. So again, that's another melodic device that you can use. Whenever you hear any of these kind of licks, that kind of, that kind of thing, that's a neighbor note as well. That's going up to the root note, up to the 2nd and back. It's when you play a chord tone, you move up or down to the next scale note and back. That's all it is. A flat, B flat, A flat. With this one, it's E flat, F, back to E flat. So chord tone, non-chord tone, back to chord tone. There, jump up to the root note of the chord, up at the octave, and drop down to the 3rd. So again, chord tones. And then we're filling in the gaps between the 3rd and the 5th. Remember what I said about this arpeggio? In between the 3rd and the 5th there, we've got 2 notes. We've got the 4th, we've got the sharp 4 and the 5. That's not a scale, it's nothing like that. We're just filling in the gaps with the chromatic passing notes. I mean, it's a passing note, a diatonic one, and then a chromatic one, but don't worry about the jargon. We're just filling in the gaps. So whenever you see that, that kind of sound, or in walking bass lines. That sound, it's just that third up to the fifth, just the passing notes in there. So that's what we've got melodically. And again, it all becomes part of vocabulary, because then, let's say that drop down from the root note down to that third, you might think, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Oh, I'll try putting that in sometime. Or that whole move. You know, whatever you're playing, you can stick it in as basically a bit of a lick. But that's all it is. It's just some melodic stuff and rhythmic stuff that you can put in there that you're taking on as vocabulary. So, again, this is all about chord tones. You learn the chord tones. You also learn what the appropriate scale is by filling in the gaps diatonically between those chord tones, giving us A flat mixolydian. So A flat 7, A flat mixolydian, and then you can just fill in the gaps. You know, just put in those chromatics between them. If you know how to use the chromatics, then, like I said, you can use all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, and, you know, you can use them all, and all bets are off. You can just use them in any way. Well, not in any way you want. You have to learn how to use them, but it gives you a lot of stuff to work with. So, again, this is all about getting that melodic vocabulary, but also rhythmic vocabulary. Like I said, that first rhythm, that one-e and da, so that one-e and da, that is one of the key parts of this riff. If I just start the drum beat up again. That's got a lot of character. I can play anything around that, and it's still going to have that kind of feel. Okay, so you can just take a little rhythmic fragment like that, and then just use it to death. You know, use that as the kind of springboard for the other stuff that you're going to do, and all those other things in there that, you know, moving between. I mean, let's see if I can stick that in somewhere that doesn't sound like that. So there you go. There's that sixth in there. It's the same notes. So you just play around with the notes that, you know, that you've got in that riff. You know, you've got that dominant 7, but you got that major 6th in there. You don't have to think, oh, pentatonic scales and mixolydian modes and things like that. You're just taking these little rhythmic and melodic fragments and then just kind of, you know, using them. You know, this is how you use scales and arpeggios, because it's one thing to be able to, you know, I've done plenty of lessons on arpeggios, chord construction, scales, modes, all that kind of stuff, and that's all well and good, but what does that tell you? It doesn't tell you how you use them at all. You know, there's actually, if you learn the nuts and bolts of, you know, I could sit there and say, okay, major arpeggio, minor arpeggio, you know, augment and diminish, major 7, you know, minor 7, blah, 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 blah. All that teaches you is how to go. Now, that doesn't mean that's not important stuff. It's incredibly important stuff, but you have to see how it's applied. And it's only in looking at the stuff that you're playing, you know, like even like the simple grooves that I've just covered. It's only in looking at those with an analytical eye and just, you know, spotting stuff as you're playing it, you know, looking at what the chord's supposed to be. No, or even not what the chord's supposed to be. Let's say you don't know what the chord is at all. Let's say you've just learned the bass line. You don't know what the chord is. You will see these patterns, you know, under the fingers. You'll just see them there. And you'll think, oh, yeah, that's a major. You know, if they've got a bass line like, you when you first start playing, you'll just learn it as a bunch of frets. Like 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 5th fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 5th fret, that kind of thing. But once you know what a major arpeggio is, you don't have to do any of that. You just think, oh, major arpeggio, major arpeggio, major arpeggio. And you don't even have to think G, C, and D. You can think chord 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 4, 5, 4. So all I'm thinking is 1, 4, and 5. I know it's major arpeggios, and there you go. There's the bass line. You don't have to start looking at all the little notes in there, and that's how things become a lot easier. As the longer that you've been playing, the more stuff you learn. It's just stuff that you can draw upon. So hopefully that's been quite helpful. I won't go on any longer with all that stuff. But like I said, the Groove Trainer course that I've released, Groove Trainer Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 2 is out this week. It finishes, the sale for it finishes tomorrow. I go through all of this stuff. So I've got I've got a bunch of different lessons devoted to what that functional harmony is, the rhythms, how you count them, blah, blah, blah. And then for every single groove, there's 60 grooves in each course, so there's 120 overall. I do a full breakdown like I've done with this, but I go a lot further in depth. So I will talk about the actual technique, I'll break down the harmony, break down the drum beat, break down the chord progression, the whole works for every single one of them. And they're progressively done, so it starts with incredibly simple and then gets a lot harder. Okay? So that's it for that seminar, if you can call it that. So let's have a look what everybody's been saying. Unbeknownst to me, I'm guessing the mic won't have been working. Or we've had a delay. So, oh man, got a lot of questions. I'll just jump up. I'll just try and find ones that stand out. If you've got one in particular that you want me to go over, just put it down at the bottom. All right, that was where I'm at the delay part. Okay, thank you. Some nice comments. Get to the point, man. Well, I have to wait until everybody gets in, because I'll tell you what happens if I don't. People come in halfway through me talking, and then they're like, oh, and they all start asking, they get lost. So I always wait for a good 10 minutes before starting with all the talk. Love to see some rude people in the chat. Which bass is that? This is the Enfield Lionheart. I think I spotted as I was scrolling up there a few people asking questions about it. So this is an Enfield Lionheart. I use it on all the videos, so you must have seen it. Made by Martin Sims from Kent. I've gone over this many, many times, that there's a connection between me and Martin that we didn't even realize when I first met him. He'd actually given me a bass to actually use on the channel, and I didn't realize that my wife's one of her best friends is married to his nephew. It's like the most ridiculous, small world thing ever, because he doesn't live anywhere near here. I live on the Isle of Wight. He lives in Kent, 150 miles away or whatever. Yeah, and he has nothing to do with bass or anything. He's not a musician. So, so this is an Enfield Lionheart, and it has these funky pickups that have got lights on them. So, as you can see, I can switch them to different lights. Green is single coil. Blue is dual coil, which is, I think, Music Man, big fat humbucker. And then red is split coil. So depending on what combination you have, let's say I soloed. So if I solo the back pickup there, that's going to be, that's more of that jazz bass back pickup. I mean, I'll take off yeah, so that's that. If I was to switch that to blue, that'd be more of a Music Man. So if I was to, that's on there. Yeah, that's right. So you get more of that. So I'm overloading the amp a little bit. So that's more of a Music Man kind of sound. I quite like I like having them both on there and putting it in the middle, and you get quite a modern sound, but like a nice round low end. That's the most modern of the sounds I think I've found in it. That's a funky sound. And then red, obviously, if I was to put it to the front pickup, that's precision. So yeah, that's what all that's about, and it's got a Glockenklang preamp in it. It's it's beautiful looking thing. It's really good, and I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to be saying, "Oh, that's just a wall ripoff," which I just don't see. I mean, I've had a wall. I've had one wall before. I don't have it anymore, but I don't think it looks like a wall at all. It's they're both completely different basses, and walls are great, but it's a very, very different bass to a wall. It doesn't even. I compare because I've had a few people say that, and then I've compared the actual pictures of it, that and a wall, and I maybe a little bit, but with the horn here, but man, there's and slightly around the body here, but there's tons of basses that look like that. That's like saying a blooming, some of these other bass. Well, what would you say? There's so many basses that look like a jazz bass, but you don't, it's a bit odd, really. I have struggled with pinky, but practice and practice and practice. Yep. In terms of building up your pinky, you just have to use it more. That's all it is. So just get used to just playing with it. I actually find I prefer using my pinky to my third finger for a lot of stuff. Yeah, just use it more. And I mean, when you're in this kind of position, for like I was saying about the 3 kind of fret position. You can tell I'm in precision mode at the moment. Playing octaves is actually a good way to get some practice with your 4th finger because it's all going to be 1st and 4th finger. Okay, so Robert says, thank you for demoing this bass pattern. I've been struggling with playing Birthday by the Beatles, which uses a similar pattern. Yes, it does, and you'll hear it so much in rock and roll kind of things. It's that dominant 7, but with that 6th in there. It's immensely common. Yeah, I've not done any live. Somebody just said missed the live hangs. I've not been doing any for a while because I've been I've had a lot going on. Any of you that are friends with me on Facebook, on my personal page, will know that we bought our first house about last year sometime. It's a renovation job. It's basically a bomb site. And so I've been going between doing that, creating the new courses, the Groove Trainer ones. And I just have not had any time, what with all the other stuff as well, with the site and the, it takes up all my time, really. I've just not had any time to do the live hangs, unfortunately. But once I've got through now we've got this Groove Trainer thing out, I'll probably start to do more live hangs. I love doing the live hangs as well. It's like, I probably prefer this to anything because I get direct access to you all. Really appreciate this is Salijima. Really appreciate lessons of work. Is a passing note the same thing as an approach note? Well, it can be the same note exactly, but no, they have different functions. So if let me just put it back into a normal sound. So if you were playing between 2 chord tones, so if let's say I take a C major scale, so a C major arpeggio there. If I play from let's say the chord in effect, it's all about what chord's going on. Okay, so if the chord is C major, that's a good point. Okay, ignore just thinking of it in a key. It's easy especially if you're a player primarily rock, and often you'll just think about a key. Okay, I'm in E minor, and then you don't think of what the chords are. You just think, oh, I'm in E minor. You have to think about the harmony, the actual chords that are at play to know whether it's going to be a passing note or an approach note. So if the chord, not the key, the chord is C major, about that? C major arpeggio, C, D, E. D is a passing note there. It's passing between C and E. An approach is where it's not been at a chord tone just before. You're approaching a chord tone, usually in the next chord. So if you're on a C and then the next chord's going to be A, and I play G, G sharp, A, that G sharp is actually a chromatic approach between those two notes. But let's say that I just played G to the A. You could see that G as a chord tone of the C, but functionally it's actually an approach note into the A. Okay, so it wasn't passing between anything. There wasn't an F before. If there was an F before, then it would be. So, I mean, some of these things turn into grey areas because there's multiple ways of being able to describe them, and it doesn't really matter. Don't get too anal about it, because basically what you're looking at is ways of working around the chord tone framework. So you don't have to worry about what the actual name is, because there's auxiliary notes, there's appoggiaturas, there's acciacaturas, there's all these different kinds of things. It's basically classical analysis. But what you're actually looking at is just the chord tones, and then just working around it as a framework. Just think of those as the skeleton of the actual chord, and then the rest of it's just the meat and potatoes. It's just the other stuff around it. So it's more about that. It's knowing where your consonant notes are. It's just thinking chord tones, move between them, approach them, do stuff around, do whatever you want around them. You can have enclosures. If I'm on that C major, B, D, C, that you could call that an enclosure, but you don't really have to worry about whether it's called an enclosure. You just think, okay, what can I do around them? For instance, that, when I played the third and the fifth and I just filled in the gaps, you don't have to worry about whether it's called a chromatic passing note or a whatever. It's, you just, like I said, it's filling in the gaps, or sometimes moving out from a chord tone and back. Ba-doing, ba-doing, Just kind of think of it more like that. If you were doing a theory exam, you might have to know what it's called. You might have to know what an auxiliary note is, but not for general bass playing. How do you learn difficult bass lines by ear? Do you slow down software or listen at normal speed? It depends on what it is. It depends on the quality of the actual thing I'm listening to. It depends on how buried the bass is in the mix. If it's like a crazy Frank Zappa thing, then I might slow it down. Most bass lines, on a rock tune or something like that, or on a pop tune, I'll generally be able to hear it, and then I'll just do it in real time. If you're listening, especially if you know what the chord progression is, and you just, if it's, and you hear, obviously, I'm not going to have to slow that down. I can hear it's the root notes, but sometimes, if you can't hear exactly what's going on, and it just sounds a bit muffled, I might slow it down then. There's some things, like some incredibly simple things, that I've had to slow right down because you just can't hear it. It's kind of buried in the mix in a weird way. And I'm like, some people don't care about whether you get it note perfect. But I've done a lot of transcribing jobs. And if you're doing transcribing jobs, then you've got to be bang on. So sometimes I'll really get laser focused and slow things right down, and then try using software to take the bass line out. I've got to say, now's a good time to mention it. My favorite thing for extracting a bass line at the moment is something called ripx. If you look up ripx, I'll do a video on this in the coming weeks. It is the best thing I've ever seen for transcribing. It basically does what a lot of pieces of software do, where it creates stems. So if you put in a tune, "Ain't No Stopping Us Now" or something, and you stick it in there, it'll split it into bass, drums, and all that stuff, which there's a lot of ways of doing that. There's AI ones that are online and stuff. This one does it. It does it as well as any of them, but it actually puts it on a graph. So there's a keyboard down the side. You can see what the notes are. It actually analyzes the notes and puts them up, and rhythmically it tells you what the tempo is. It tells you everything, and you don't have to, find a bit and then, slow it down. You can actually just click on the note and it'll play it. Play the actual note that was in the recording, just that note. So you can just sit there and you can, let's say it was an E, an open E, right, and it's there, you can just click on it, and you'll hear that E, 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 and you can see on the keyboard at the side. It's a real cheat way of doing it. It's not perfect. If it's a bass line that's really hard to pick out, that the actual AI can't pick out that well, then it's it's not always perfect, but it's damn good. And just that way that it analyzes the notes and puts them up. And when notes are moving by and some of them are a little bit kind of slurry, it won't tell you what those notes. Well, I mean, you can still see what it is. You can still click on it, but they kind of become one note. If it's like brr, brr, it just becomes one of them. So you have to play that, and it goes brr, brr. Okay, but by a long way, it's the best thing I've ever seen for transcribing stuff. If you're trying to work out some tunes, man, RipX. I can't remember how much it is. It's not that expensive, but it's not cheap. Something in my head's telling me $60, but oh man, it's really good. Okay, so suggest a daily practice routine for beginners in the middle of Module 2 of Basic Fundamentals. Well, your main practice is really going to come from learning songs. I would say for anybody that's just starting out, just find songs, your favourite songs, or just simple songs. Get a bunch of soul tunes and then just learn those. I spent the first, let's say, 2 years, 3 years of playing along to tapes, back then it were tapes, and I just used to have these mixtapes of, back then it were metal tunes I'd be playing, so it'd be like Megadeth, Pantera, all that stuff, and I'd just sit there playing through those mixtapes, through the whole lot, or I might learn an album like Master of Puppets, or something like that. So that was like my first few years, but obviously you'd want to start out with really simple stuff, but at the same time, I think I was learning scales and things like that just because I was kind of interested in it, but I wasn't getting deep into the stuff that I was talking about earlier was actually about how you use those things. And back then I was learning these scales, I'd get a scales book out of the library and I'd look through it and I was like, oh, that's great, there's a Persian scale, but I wouldn't know how to use it. I'd think I did because I'm sitting there going, I'd make up little melodies and stuff like that, but there's a lot more to it than that when you actually get into studying harmony. Just learn songs. Go through the lessons, learning what raking is and all of those kind of things, but you can't beat learning songs. Alongside that, if you really want to take it seriously, I would suggest learning to read music at the same time. I've got simple steps to sight reading. I mean, I'd work through that. I wish I'd have done that sooner. So I'd have done that at the same time. But being self-taught and just learning songs, that's fine. But reading can make a difference to all parts of your playing. Because, for instance, the thing that you learn when you learn to read music is you learn the notes on the neck perfectly. Like, if I hadn't have learned to read music, I wouldn't have known the neck as well as I do it now. I know... I mean, obviously, most people that have been playing a long time do know all the notes on the neck, but... like, it becomes that you don't second guess anything. It's like you instinctively know every single fret on the fretboard because you've just seen them so many times. You've got this constant testing of C, or there, or wherever it is, there's a D. If you're in this position, it's going to be there's a D. You've got this constant testing of your actual fretboard skills, and so you get that, but you also learn a lot about rhythm. When we were looking at that bass line earlier on, that bump, ba-dum, you learn what all those rhythms are, what they all sound like, what they look like, and it's great for your rhythmic vocabulary. So aside from learning songs, I would suggest learning to read music. Victor Wooten says, it's all rhythm. Bad notes don't matter when passing or soloing if rhythm is nasty. To some extent, but I do agree also with Jeff Berlin in the way that, a bad note's still a bad note. That might be what you want to play, but if you don't want to play it, then it's not what you want to play. I mean, it's all about intent, isn't it? If the thing that you want to play is a certain thing and you don't play it, then it's wrong. What kind of pickups are those, Matt? Right, I've talked about that already. Wish me luck. Yeah, I'd not say. I just had to read that, but it's luckily it's not that bad. Right, I'm going to jump down a fair bit because obviously this is what people were talking about while I was playing. Gina says, "Oh, you rock, Mike. You put theory and technique in a way. I can totally put it into practice. Thank you very much." Well, that's what my intention was there. It's all about actually taking theory and all that, lingo and woo. Well, it's not woo, but all of that stuff that can seem a little bit unapplicable, and applying it, learning why you actually learn it. It's all well and good for people to say that, oh, don't question it, just learn it. And if you were going through the classical tradition, then yes, that kind of, because it all makes sense eventually. But for a lot of people, especially if you kind of come in from more of a self-taught kind of way, and you're just trying to find these things out, you really do need to know why or how to use this stuff at the same time. What are your pickups? I already talked about that. Obviously, this was all a bit earlier. They're called Sims Super Quads. He makes the basses and makes the pickups. Although I do need to get this bass fixed. I had it looked at, but the fret's gone again. So everything's great, but then when you get up here, let's see where it happens. That fret is dead. Yeah, that needs seeing too. Like I was learning, I've just started learning, what is it? There's a Kreutzer etude. How's it go? Let me sort this out. How's it go? I've just been learning it. So it's a Kreutzer etude. I'm going to try and get that down over the next week. And as I was starting to learn it, I was trying to do it up the octave, and obviously can't do anything up there at the moment because that fret's gone. So it's a little bit annoying. Yep, everybody's got it right. Sims Super Quads. Any of you guys get neck pain from playing a lot? I got a large strap like Marcus, but it doesn't help much. I mean, you probably all know my background in this with the pain. How I destroyed my back with the bass because it was I was just playing too much, and I've lost 2 inches in height, believe it or not. But getting a good strap is really, really important. But even then, you really can't do any better than getting a lighter bass. I had a Fender Jazz Marcus Miller Signature Edition, and it's really heavy. I mean, to just hold it like this, I mean, you wouldn't think, oh, that's an incredibly heavy bass. But it is heavy. It's about 12 pounds. But stick something like that over your neck and you play it for 7 hours a day, every day. Because it was the cruise thing I was doing, and it was like we were doing anything up to minimum 5 sets, but every now and then we'd be doing 7 sets, and then I'd be playing in between it, 9 months out of the year, and man, it was we didn't get days off in those days, and it was just, it just wrecked me. I was in agony. I couldn't sneeze. If I sneezed, I had to go into a fetal position. It was horrendous. And I had to have really heavy-duty sports physio. And I'm not as bad now, and I use a lot. At the moment, I've got a cushion behind me there for my... it's one of the... What do you call it? The... can't remember the name of the guy now that does the back thing. Anyway, there's a book that you can get called... Not Fix My Back, it's... Fix Your Back or something like that. Can't remember the damn name of the guy now. Anyway, he's got a good book about fixing your back, and I would recommend it for any... he says without remembering what the name is, but I'd definitely recommend it. I've done a video on it. I've done a video on my back. Look up, I don't know, bass playing back pain. It'll probably come up. I do a whole thing on it. Do you prefer one finger per fret? I do if I need it. I don't if I don't. But it's got nothing to do with stretch. Like I said earlier on, if you can't stretch that, then you just move. Like, for instance, the perfect example of this is that you can play with one finger. That's just a really big stretch there for the F major, but you can use one finger. So in terms of actually using the other fingers, if you can move that first finger around, without gaps in it. You want to try and aim for no gaps. Obviously, you don't really want to be using one finger for that all the time, but just using the fourth finger then just becomes easy if you're used to doing one finger. So you jump with the hand. That's the perfect example of how that stretch thing. I turn off when people start telling me that they, that they don't have a big enough stretch, because it's completely unimportant on bass. You can play with one finger and you'd be fine. One finger in both hands. James Jamerson played with one finger. I mean, fair enough. If you want to play Buffalo, what is it called? Some crazy, like Elephant Gun by David Lee Roth or something like that, then obviously you can't do it with one finger. You're going to need three. But, for most bass lines, you can use one finger in both hands most of the time. So when you just bring a fourth finger in or a third finger, you just move just as you would with one finger. I like meat and potatoes, yeah. Yeah, that neck pain thing, just go back and look at that video that I did. I mean, I had serious... I mean, if you were here, I could show you, but my... that shoulder, if I didn't have a top on, and then I tense both shoulders, that one is massive and that one's small. So it's like, I've just got this ridiculous shoulder. I showed it Scott Devine last time. I'm seeing him on Thursday. Last time I went back to Yorkshire, because we're from the same place. We went out for a steak, and I thought I'd showed him. I showed him. He could not believe it. I said, "You feel my shoulder?" He just couldn't believe the difference between the two. Try Moises app to isolate bass. Yeah, that's okay. But honestly, Rip-X, by far, by a country mile, it is the best one I've seen so far. And I've seen quite a few. All right, I'm going to jump down quite a bit. What do you think about training chords and notes from frets 12 and above? Yeah. Obviously, I've got a chords course. I do a lot of chords. Learning chords is a really valuable thing to do. I know that you might not use them in songs particularly. You might use the odd kind of double stops more, or that kind of thing. But just learning. Just basic chord voicings beyond that 12th fret is really, really, really useful, because then you get to learn what the chord progressions sound like, rather than just you actually get to know what a major 7 chord sounds like, what a minor 7 sounds like, what a dominant 7 sounds like. It's really, really good. When I first learned chords on bass, that was when I was at... I'd learned some chords, but I was doing my degree at Leeds College, and I made a decision to learn every chord that I could. Like voice, I'd just go through all the different, chord construction principles, and I thought, okay, well, how would I play this major 7? How would I play this 13 chord? Whatever. Just worked through all of them to find voicings for them, and so that way, when we were doing stuff at college, I didn't feel like a numpty. I wanted to be able to know what all these chords were. Keyboard players and that, they all know all of that stuff. They know exactly what all those chords sound like. So it's great for your ear and just for your general harmony knowledge. Because instead of just learning that, a major 7 is that on an arpeggio, you actually know that then it's that in terms of the actual harmonic sound. Do you use double bass transcriptions much? Well, funnily enough, that was a double bass transcription. Obviously, stuff like that's cello, but there's loads of double bass books you can work through. Those Kreutzer etudes are really good. Simandl, all that stuff. There's like Rabath. There's loads of etudes that you can work through. Have you ever tried a Court bass? Yeah. I've tried Jeff Berlin's Court. That's a nice one. Is there a video on bass playing neck pain? Well, that one that I've told you about, that one's more back, but it applies to neck as well. I mean, my neck got so bad. It's actually your shoulder, really, that gets really bad. It's this bit in here. And I remember playing on stage, and it was a reading gig. It was on one of those cruise gigs, and it got so bad that I was tapping everything. I was hammering everything. So I'm reading a show and just having to just hammer on everything. Whatever. And I was just holding the bass all the time like that, off, so it was off my neck. I couldn't handle it anymore. It was just getting so painful. The solution to it is a lighter bass. Or less playing. But, I mean, that was silly. The amount of playing that I was doing during that time is not normal. I mean, even if I was in a, I can't think of any bass situation, any music situation I could get in where I would actually be playing that much at all. I just can't. I don't know what you would be doing. Doing 7 hours a day of playing, for 9 months without a day off. It's very rare that you ever do that, and that's what killed me. If I'd have only been doing like 3 gigs a week, or even 4 gigs a week, just doing 2 sets a night, it'd have been nothing. That'd have been easy. But yeah. Leland Sklar has a left-handed shoe. Okay. I switched to a double strap and love it. Yeah, I tried one. I just can't get into it. But I know that... who is it that uses the double strap? I can't remember. Can't remember who uses one now. But they're really, really good. But, I mean, some people swear by them. And I remember trying to put it on. And it's a little bit of a faff putting it on, but when I did get it on, it took a lot of the weight off. Thanks, Mark. Very enjoyable interview with John Poole. I didn't know he played bass on Summit Cardiac Sounds. I sent an email to Jim Smith complimenting his bass playing on the song Poole played on. John played on those tunes. Yeah, John's wicked. I love John. He's such a nice guy. We had a nice chat before that interview and then after, and I've spoken to him quite a bit on DMs afterwards. He's a really lovely guy. We've got a lot of friends in common as well. I just tried to play the 5 advanced slap riffs Mark taught me in his video, and there's no way to do them with one finger. No, I mean, obviously there are some things that would be very, very difficult to do with one finger. Point being, though, that if you can play lines with one finger, I don't mean that you have to play things with one finger. What I'm saying is, if I can play something that has a large stretch with one finger, then it actually just becomes so much easier. You don't have to do that. I can do that, but I wouldn't. It's silly. You just move the hand. F to A, 1st fret to 5th fret. That's what a lot of people think you've got to be able to do, and that's not true at all. I would never do that. The only time I'd do something like that is if it was something stupid like that down there. Where you've got to do hammer-ons and pull-offs and things like that. If it got really down here. But, why would I do that? I mean, the thing to do is move the hand. But make sure that you've got no gaps between those notes. So you want to get good at the actual movement between the notes. Full held note duration. So if I was playing them in time, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. That note holds until 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4. But you can do that with one finger. 1, 2. You just have to move quick. See, if you can play a large stretch thing like that with one finger, then adding the 4th finger in just makes it a lot easier. is it better to start on Groove Trainer 1 or is it okay to start on 2? Well, you can start on 2, but it's just that a lot of the stuff that I talk about in 2, I actually cover in the lessons at the beginning of 1. It depends on your level. If you've already got a little bit of harmony knowledge, because I do talk about the basics of harmony and everything in Groove Trainer 1, don't be put off by how the progressive bass grooves start off so easy in Groove 1. It's like this, really, really simple. But by the end of it, I'm doing a lot of syncopated eighth notes. I don't go into 16th notes in that one. I just go up to eighth notes. But we have a lot of syncopation and stuff. But it's more that, see, some people buy that Groove Trainer and think it's just about learning a bunch of riffs, but it's not. If you look back over this video and see all of the stuff that I've outlined, like the harmony stuff and the vocabulary things and all of that, that's what I'm talking about in it. Okay, so it's not just about learning a riff, it's about getting the most out of a riff. It's about learning how to apply all of that other stuff. Mark, what bass players have inspired you the most? I don't know. Me and John were talking about that in the interview the other night. I was massively into Billy Sheehan when he first came out. It wasn't the first thing I learned, but I remember seeing him do, the Addicted to That Rush going. And I got his instructional video, and it had got that thing on it where he's going. All that kind of thing. I was like, oh man, what is that? And then he just whips it to, does all the crazy picking stuff. But then when I was watching him do all his, all that kind of stuff, I was like, oh man. And then, Stu Ham, I saw him do... I saw him doing that, and I was like, "Oh man, that!" I was just crazy, And is it that one? I just got blown away by all the flashy stuff because I was like 14, 15, and I was just like, "Wee!" And that's what I wanted to do. And so Billy Sheehan and Stu Ham were massive influences on me at that point. The facial expressions and everything. I had the Billy Sheehan thing down. I'd got long hair. I was like playing in all these speed metal bands. I was like tapping like a lunatic. And and then I went to music college, and of course you get more into jazz and stuff. And so I got a lot more into Jaco Pastorius. I was like obsessed with him for a while, like everybody is. First time I saw Mark King later. I'd heard loads of Level 42, but I'd never seen any of his crazy slap solo things. And then I was like, oh man, this guy's great. So I got into Mark King for a while. And now he only lives like down the road, about a mile down there. I was massively into Queen. So John Deacon's a massive inspiration for me. John Poole and Tim Smith from Cardiacs. I was massively into those. But I was into all the metal guys as well. So I was into like Cliff Burton, Steve Harris. Oh, I just used to learn everything by Steve Harris at the time. I think I remember the first thing I heard of his was because it was like I got into metal about 88, 89. And I remember hearing, I think the first Maiden album I actually heard was Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And I was like, oh, what is that? And this was before I played bass, actually. So I got really into that. And then I was like, oh, man, I want to sound like Steve Harris. And then I got really into Frank Bello, actually. I really liked Anthrax. And who else was there? Dave Ellefson, because I was a big Megadeth fan. But by that point, I think I'd moved into the Jaco kind of thing. I was massively into Zappa, so Scott Tunis, Arthur Barrow, Tom Fowler, Patrick O'Hearn, all those guys. There's a bunch of people that I'm probably missing out. No surprise I'm really into at that point. No, I can't remember. And there's people like Pino Palladino and Marcus Miller, obviously. And then Victor Wooten, I didn't get into until later, and I've never been a massive. I love Victor, and his playing's ridiculous, but I've never been one of the guys that learns all this stuff. Because by that point, I'd sort of, when I first heard Victor, it was a little bit later, mid '90s when I heard him, and by that point, I was at college and I was doing all the jazzy stuff, and I'd overloaded on the tapping and slapping and all that stuff, and I kind of got my technique into a position where I could kind of do a lot of that stuff. But then I heard Victor and I was like, man, I just cannot do that. I couldn't do the double thumbing, I couldn't do anything. I was like, man, I've spent so long messing around with all this tapping and slapping stuff, and now I've got to start again on that while I've got reading exams to do and all this kind of stuff. So I was doing all this, I was doing my degree or whatever. So the last thing I could be bothered with was learning a load of new tapping and slapping stuff that was going to be of no use to me whatsoever. So I didn't really get into Victor that much, but he is the man basically. Right, last few questions because I'm gonna go in a second. SBL has a course on posture and bass player health. Save you back in it. Yes, it has actually. Yeah, that'd be worth watching. Can you play the most difficult bass riff you can think of? I can't actually. I don't know what the most difficult bass. I don't know what it'd be, to be honest. I can't think of anything offhand. I don't try learning really difficult bass riffs. I just learn riffs if I have to. I mean, probably one of the hardest things I've ever learned was that. If I put the thing on, solfeggiato that I learned that. Messes it up, but that was one of the trickiest things I've ever had to learn. Not that I had to learn it, I just did it for a live stream on Facebook. And then played it on the 12. I learned it in 12 days, and then I learned it. So that was probably the hardest thing I had to play, or to learn, simply because of the restrictions. If I'd have spent several weeks learning it, it'd have been, or like several months learning it, it'd have been a lot easier. But I didn't. I did it in 12 days, and then decided to do the video. So I remember when I did the video, you've probably seen it. I mean, the recording of it. It's okay. There's a few bum notes in there, a few little scuffs. But I think in terms of the things I've learned, and then actually played, that's probably the hardest one. I'm sure there's some Zappa stuff that I've learned that's just like way beyond. I learned the Black Page once. I couldn't play it to you now. I can't remember it all. I know that's the beginning. I used to play it behind my head, stupidly. I was just an idiot when I was a kid. I just remember learning the Black Page. I learned it because my brother was learning it for an exam. He's a pianist. We learned it together, and we just played the melody together. And just like an idiot, I was trying to play it behind my head. I had all these tapping bits I was doing in it. Like, nutter. I have a ring finger injury on my fretting. I don't know whether to exercise it or rest it. I'd probably rest it. What were some of the most challenging barriers you had to overcome as far as learning and/or technique? Currently been working double thumb for a while, and it's been taking some time. I don't know. All of this stuff was in the first few years of me playing. I think since about 1995, I don't think I've really progressed very much. I mean, it's I have in certain areas, obviously. Technically, I think I was probably technically better when I was, after I've been playing about 5 or 6 years, because I was just playing all the time. But the other stuff is more my actual knowledge rather than technique. I could play all kinds of stuff back then. I just don't practice anymore. It's like I barely practice ever. I wish I could. I wish I had the time. I just don't have the time. I do practice for things that I do on here occasionally, but it's not like I've got this. I'm not a Yannick Guizdala guy. I mean, dudes like him, they're just getting better and better and better as years go by. They just get better and better. But I've got so much going on with this now that I just don't get time to sit down and have proper practice routines. I always feel like I'm wasting my time if I'm not doing something to do with this. I need to get out of that mindset, really. But yeah, in terms of learning to read was quite a big one. learning. One of the things that I remember learning was that I did on the video yesterday. Take off from that. You know that thing? I just couldn't get it for ages. I just used to start trying to speed up and it just went to a mess. That's probably one of the things I've spent most amount of time on, just going over and over and over it for weeks. Just, I'd start slow. And I'd get to about that, and then any faster than that, it just messed up. Now, I don't even know how I could play it wrong now. It's just a muscle memory thing. When playing in a slap pluck style, my plucks are loud and forceful. Any tips to soften? I know this sounds really stupid, but probably just try and soften them. Or it might be not a bass setup thing, but I mean, compression will sort that out. But it might be a tone setting. It's really difficult without seeing you actually play, because there might be loads of different things that are going on there. Flea, Justin Chancellor, and Les Claypool, what got me started. Yeah, I was really into Les Claypool when I got started. I was, trying to play, all the obvious ones like Jerry Was a Race Car Driver and stuff. I kind of stopped listening to him a little bit beyond Sailing the Seas of Cheese. I still loved him, but I was massively into Sailing the Seas of Cheese, and then I don't know, I just kind of drifted onto something else. And yeah, I was into Flea at the start as well. I was getting heavily into playing around the time Blood Sugar Sex Magic came out. Mother's Milk was the album that was out at the time when I first started. So I was, learning. And then I just Blood Sugar Sex Magic was that was the last one for them that I really, really was into as well. Like, I was obsessed with that album. But it was that time, it was like I was in my late, how old was I? I'd have been 16, 17, 18 during those years. Like, I was massively into Faith No More, Angel Dust came out, and all that. The grunge scene was kicking in. That's my late teenage years, between 15 and 20. I was born in 75, so so I was 15 in 1990, so I started playing in 90. So 90 to 95 are those first 5 years that I had, and you only have to look at what the bands were to know kind of what I was learning. It was Nirvana, Soundgarden, Megadeth, Pantera, blah, Faith No More, Primus, just all the stuff that was out at that time. I'm 48 this year. And by the way, I thought I'd mention it. It's like I haven't been able to play it. The fact that I'm actually playing today is a blooming miracle, because I've had some kind of viral infection over the past week or two. Our kids have got something as well, but I got a bit of a sore throat and I got a headache. This is week before last, and then all of a sudden one day I woke up and I was aching everywhere. I'd got aches in my legs, in my neck, in my chest, everywhere. My calves, as if I've done ridiculous. It felt like I'd done 600 squats and then done 600 press-ups and stuff. It was in a right mess. I could barely walk. And then it changed. The following day, it shifted to a load of other different muscles. And then it kind of settled after about 3 days. And since then, I've had these pains in my wrists and arms and my hands. And I've not been able to play. I actually picked up I got a bit panicky because I couldn't play. I tried playing through some stuff and I was like, man, I can't play. And it's only the last 2 days that I've actually been able to play. So I'm quite fortunate that I've actually just worked through the stuff I have, because I've still got loads of weakness in my wrist here. It's really weird. It's wearing off, but it's just I had a blood test on Wednesday just to see if it was something weird, but it's kind of going now. So I think it was just some weird viral infection. Some weird way it affected me. I had COVID tests and stuff, and it wasn't COVID. Okay, I'll get off in a sec. My missus is going out. I'm babysitting tonight. I'm working on that slap today. Oh, cool. I just finally got bass with 24 frets. I can finally play. Yep. Jerry Was a Race Car Driver. Will you ever move to USA? Oh, well, I was gonna last year, wasn't I? Anybody that was watching all my live streams and stuff will have seen it. I was gonna be moving to Houston, but in the end, we didn't for one of a million and one reasons. I was doing all the. I'd gone quite far down the road with it as well. I got all lawyers and everything, and the visas were all getting set up. I was going to be moving out. We were either moving to Katy or the Woodlands just outside Houston, and it all fell through, and we just never did it. And now we just bought ourselves a house with all the money that was saving up over a period to try and do the move, which is now. So I'm now basically broke because we've got to renovate the thing, and it's like literally just absolutely broken me. It's ridiculous, but we're getting there. We're almost there. What's the best method? What's the best method to also play 5-string from a 4-string bass? You just have to get used to it. I don't like playing 5s that much. I mean, because I started on 4 and I didn't really play 5 until about 8 years into playing, and so it just wasn't as natural as it is with 4. I play them. I have to use them in shows and stuff, but I much prefer playing 4. Downloaded a trial of Ripex. Amazing, thanks for that. Yep, Ripex is the that sounds like some kind of porn site, doesn't it? It's absolutely the best isolation software I've seen. Do you have any plans to do a video on something from Michael Manring? Well, we did the interview with him, so there is that. I'll have a listen. It's really difficult with Michael Manring stuff because he does so many alternate tunings and switches, between tunings halfway through. So, yeah, possibly. Still owing that beer. Yep. Houston's hot and humid. Yeah. Okay, everybody, it's 6 o'clock here. I need to get back. Said I'd get back before 7, so I need to get out of here. Do you still listen to any Bravo? only when he pops up. Cool. All right then, everybody. So I will really love this. So you remember the sale for Groove Trainer Volume 2 finishes tomorrow. There is a spring sale coming up as well in about 2 weeks, round about Easter time. We always have one at that time of year. So we've not had a sale since Christmas. So if you're looking to get any more bargains, that are not the Groove Trainer course, then everything's going to be 25% discount, and that's in 2 weeks. So if you were thinking about a course that's not Groove Trainer, maybe wait 2 weeks before the sale comes on. All right then, everybody. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you later.